Welcome to Red Pill Relationships number 46, talking to boys about girls.
Hey guys, Paul and Tom here. Good to see you. Good to be seen. Once again, we're back here talking about aspects of red pill relationships, and that means a lot of relationships. And occasionally we both get requests for material regarding dealing with teenagers. And so one of the things we thought we might want to cover for a little bit is talking to boys about girls. And interesting topic these days. Might have been the same old talk from the 1950s on through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But now, if you're wise, you're going to have a very different conversation about girls with boys than you ever had before.
Yep.
And so this is actually quite an important topic. And I guess I want to start out by saying is that it pays to have a pretty good understanding of how to talk to teenagers to begin with.
Yes.
And so let's just set the stage for that by saying that your long and lengthy lectures in the world of the teenage mind, that's what you call ineffective communication.
Yes.
It does not work.
Yes.
Teenagers do not want to hear your long lectures. Teenagers have an attention span for what you have to say, I'm going to guess, really bordering on around 90 seconds maximum. If you go any longer than that, it's a lecture and they don't want to hear it.
And Paul, how about something like this? We need to sit down and talk.
Ooh, fatal flaw, fatal flaw. Yes, we need to sit down and get serious, and you need to hear my collective wisdom in my life, which is not going to apply to yours in any way. No, don't do that. Don't start a conversation with, we need to sit down and talk. Just say it. Say what you need to say. And you know something? You don't have to stop and sit down for that. You don't have to pull over to the side of the road if you're in the car and have a serious heart-to-heart. This is not how teenagers want to communicate.
Right.
They feel trapped, and the moment they feel trapped, they're resistant and they're not listening.
Yes.
And that's nothing personal. It's not a shot at you. It's just the way things are. And if most of us, I think, if we think hard enough, we can remember back to our teenage years when we felt the exact same way.
Yes. Yes. And most of the good conversations you're going to have with teenage boys is when you're doing something together. You're shoulder to shoulder, you're doing something together, and you just happen to start talking about X, Y, Z. That might go on for a little bit longer than 90 seconds, maybe 120 seconds. And still, The rule is keep it short, but doing something together really helps. And of course, the problem is, Paul, that adolescent boys are less likely to want to do something together with fathers.
Yep.
When boys are young, like, 3 to 9 to even 10 or 11, they like doing things with dad. They look up to dad. Let's wrestle, let's go fishing. Let's do this and that. And they love being with dad, but something happens when adolescence comes where that gets stopped up. And a part of what happens is our desires change. I've never seen much written about this, but it really happens. Our desires shift at when the testosterone comes in, our desires shift. And suddenly girls used to be cooties. And now all of a sudden we're attracted like a magnet, pulled in. But other things happen too. When we get this movement out of childhood, out of this thing of wanting to be with dad and wrestling and playing and whatever, we shift out of that too. Because before we thought of dad as being this wonderful, wonderful guy. He's wonderful in all aspects. But adolescents don't think like that, Paul.
No, they're trying to individuate.
Exactly. They need to take dad down. They need to deconstruct the dad that they put together that was globally wonderful. They need to take that apart because they are starting to individuate themselves.
And it's important to embrace this as much as you can. I know that, and I've talked to lots of parents, Tom, this is a very painful time.
Oh boy.
A lot of parents that don't seem to understand how their kid went from being a 12-year-old who couldn't wait to spend time with them to being 13, and the last thing on earth is that he wanted to be seen with his parents in public.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
but that's a normal part of your child finding out who they are.
Yes.
And so if you're talking about expectations and lessons in life and things like that, this is a time for that reason that you really got to consider brevity as your friend, to keep things brief, keep them in fluid in motion. Don't grab your kid and sit them down. Don't try to put them in a corner, because what happens when somebody tries to put you in a corner? Your defenses come up. You're ready to fight.
Yep.
You don't want to hear when somebody's pinning you down. You don't want to hear what they got to say.
And remember too, adolescent boys, once they thought dad was wonderful, they don't think that anymore, and they're going to be attacking.
Yep.
You know, Robert Moore used to say, God bless his heart, he used to say, the goal of the adolescent is to kill the parent, and the goal of the parent is to not retaliate.
Yep.
Think about that one. Because in a heartbeat, if you retaliated, you could wipe him out. What's that going to do for his budding individuation? It's going to do nothing. It's going to wipe him down to nothing. You know, so we need to understand that, yes, he's going to attack, and the more we can not attack back, the better, to a degree. You know, there's limits to everything, but expecting him to not like you for a while, expecting him to attack you, is probably a part of what we need to remember. We need to keep that in mind, you know.
And normal relationships, that child will eventually grow some more and circle back and reconnect with the father. This is all, but they're reconnecting as their own person.
Yes.
Not as a carbon stamp of the father.
Yes, and the process is they're setting the foundation for their own development, you know, and they need to do that. And what does a boy need to set that foundation? He needs admiration and respect. He needs those two things. And guess what? A single mother cannot give him? Just about either one. It's a rare single mother who's able to give those things. Dad can. Dad can.
And by the way, I know that there's probably single mothers out there, upon hearing something like that would just beg to differ. But you have to understand that babying and fawning over a child is not the same thing as respect and admiration.
Mothers and fathers have different gifts they bring.
Yeah.
And the fathers is being able to admire and respect and hold accountable. Fathers can't breastfeed, you know. Nope. Mothers do that. And that's okay. That's what mothers do. Dads do these things. We need to honor that. When you don't get those things as a boy, you're in trouble.
Mothers kiss wounds and make them better, and fathers teach you how to not to get the wound to begin with.
And children know that they cannot manipulate the father. They can manipulate the mother. They can tell mom, oh, mom, well, how about if we do it in 15 minutes? And she'll go, well, okay. The father, nope, we're holding the line right here, you know. They learn that.
And the mother will say okay in that fashion 1,000 times in a row, and then say, I don't know why he doesn't do what I tell him. Why do you think that is? I can't believe he does it when his father tells him.
Yes. How about that?
Anyway, so there comes upon a time, and there should be a time in all the lives of all young men when the fathers do impart wisdom, because, well, they're individuating, and a lot of times they're not listening. Mark my words, they're still hearing.
And watching.
And watching.
They're watching everything you do.
And so you come to a time with young men where you're going to have short talks, interactions with them about the subject of women. And here's where we live in a different time. Tom, I would argue that probably, you know, back in a time where men were still being admired and respected for their contributions, that the traditional talks about girls and how you treat them were probably pretty good fare.
Yes.
For young men's lives.
Yes.
Just short little talks, but we don't live in that world anymore. Your
Correct.
son is not going to unless he's inordinately lucky, he's not going to just go meet a girl who's going to look at him and his accomplishments and his work and his sacrifices for her as something that she admires and deeply respects and
Correct.
holds him in high regard about.
They've taught them not to do that, Paul.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And so
God.
the chances are he will be meeting women who will use whatever energy he puts out there. They'll suck it up, they'll use it, then they'll turn around and tell him that he hasn't done enough, that he's no good, that he doesn't think of anybody but himself, and that they deserve better than the likes of him. That is, if you have a teenage son, I guarantee you some of that is in his future, because that's the way things are today.
Yep.
So, Tom, I think the content of conversations about girls must change if we're
Yes.
ever going to, and the thing is, we don't prepare boys for this
No.
reality.
No.
Most of the time, fathers are role modeling guy that's taking shit like that and not doing anything about it.
Yes.
And so it's going to be kind of hard for that guy to sit down and say, you know, here's what you don't put up with.
Yes. And that's a very good point, Paul. And that is, if you want to teach your son how to deal with women, let him watch you do that with your wife. You know, let him watch you say no to her in a loving way. No,
Absolutely.
I don't think we can do that. He really learns from watching you be able to do that. That's how he learns. You can talk to him until you're blue in the face, he ain't going to get it. But if you can stand your ground in a loving way, he watches that like a hawk.
Absolutely. He sees every interaction you do with his mother. And this is where he learns this is how you deal with women. It's not
Exactly.
usually between men and their sons. This is not a specifically articulated communication.
Right.
Boys seem to learn through a sort of osmosis around their
Yes.
fathers by watching them interact with mothers, or how they interact with their sisters if there's female siblings in the family. Watching all that, boys learn how to interact with women.
Yes.
And if you've got a father who doesn't know how to issue a no to the mother for any reason whatsoever, or you've got a mother, say, that's psychologically, emotionally abusive with the father and he's putting up with it all the time, look, if that's you and your son's watching that, you're teaching him to be a doormat.
That's it.
That's exactly what you're showing him.
Yes.
So I think it's real important at some point, Tom, and at different, not all at once, but at different points, to have a 30-second talk about the meaning of hypergamy. To have another talk about what gynocentrism is.
Yes.
And, you know, don't underestimate a 13 or 14-year-old's capacity to cognitively get this stuff. They may not be able to embrace its depth at that age, but they can get a fundamental working knowledge of what those things mean.
Paul, I think in some ways they already have a fundamental working knowledge. They just haven't put it into words. And they see how the girls get things at school and they don't. You know, they see how girls are given this and that and the boys aren't. They see how the girls are told they're wonderful and the boys are told they're shit.
Yep.
You know? So they've got the experience. They need to put a word to that and understand from an adult to say, this is dangerous.
And it is perfectly okay when they talk about what happens at school with the way the girls are treated, the way boys are treated, and the way things are wired for girls. It is perfectly acceptable, and I think important, for them to have fathers that tell them that's bullshit.
Yes.
It's wrong.
Yes.
It may be the way the world is, and you certainly can't go in and slay all those dragons as a 13-year-old in your middle school. There's very little you can actually do about it, but you can know that it's bullshit. You can know that it's wrong, that it's bigotry.
And it's dangerous.
Yep.
I think that needs to be said. You know, this can be dangerous for you. You got to be careful.
Absolutely. And to be able to say she can be dangerous.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Boys need to know about false allegations.
Oh,
Boys need to
man.
know about all these things that go into life in 2020 are things that fathers are best if they will just articulate something about it to the son. And again, you don't sit them down and, you know, read them, one of Tom's books or one of my books out loud, beginning to end. You don't do that. But what you can do is tell them that they have worth outside what they do for girls.
Exactly. And that, Paul, is so critical, is to help the boy start to understand that he has worth in his being.
Yep.
That he's worth that we can't create another one of him. He's it. And that's really worthwhile. And I love that about you. You know, he needs to hear that. And he'll say, "Oh, Dad, shut up. Shut up." I say, "Okay, I'll shut up." But he remembers. He remembers that whole, that sticks.
What? His experience will prove what you say right. Even
Yes,
if he
yes.
says that's baloney. "Oh, Dad, yeah. What do you know? You're an old fart. You're not
Paul?
in my generation. You don't know anything." He'll say and he'll think stuff like that, even if he doesn't say it. But it is perfectly okay, because what you say to him, if you're telling him the truth,
Yes.
the truth will reveal itself in his life.
Yes.
It does every time.
Or even a good question. You know, I remember my father used to ask me every 3 or 4 years. This was like after I was 14 or so. He'd say, "Where are you going to be 5 years from now?" And I'd say, "Oh, no, I have no idea." And I'd walk away, you know. But man, that question stuck in my mind. And I'd think, what the hell? What am I going to do 5 years from now? And I'd start thinking about it. So just his asking the question and me ignoring him set the whole thing into motion. I started thinking about it. I started thinking, well, what would I like to do? And so I started thinking, because he simply asked a question. He didn't push it. He said, "Oh, okay, we'll see." So dads can just ask a question, and just simply doing that makes the boy start thinking about what's going on. You may never see the seed or the fruit of that, but the seed is there. You know, plant the seed first and see what happens.
You can ask all kinds of relevant questions. I think what you just said is a perfect example of what we're talking about, with a young man may just act like, "This is the last question I want to hear. Doesn't apply. I don't want to mess with this." But all of a sudden that does linger. For instance, if you see your son running around like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to make extra money and everything to impress a girl.
Yeah.
Ask him, is she worth this effort? Does she give you anything back?
What is he going to say, Paul?
He's going to say, "What do you know? Blah, leave me alone. She does just fine. Blah, blah,
She gives me so much."
But the first
I want to do a little something for her.
But the first time she disrespects him, if he's had a seed planted in his head that this is something wrong, he's going to notice it more.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right.
What boys tend to do with girls is they get disrespected, and to boys, this is a sign to try harder.
Ugh.
It's sad, but it's true. And they will circle back. "Oh, will you accept me now? What if I do this? What if I, balance a beach ball on my nose and clap my flippers for you? Will you throw me a piece of fish?" Yeah. And you will see your son doing this in life. And when you see it, it's a good time for one of those 30-second talks, while you're walking somewhere together or riding to the store. You just notice, "Hey, you're doing an awful lot for this girl. I hope that she respects you for that." Because if she doesn't, that's a shitty relationship. and then move on.
Yeah, you wouldn't quite have to say it like that. You could say the same thing in different words.
Well, you could say it's a poopy relationship. If you don't want to swear.
I just say, respect needs to go both ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
It needs to go both ways. That's all you got to say.
When you go out of your way to make somebody feel good, to make them feel loved, to make them feel cared about, they should honor that.
Yeah, it should be reciprocal.
Yes, and it should be admired.
You could just say, one of the wonderful things about relationships is that they are reciprocal. When I do something good for your mother, she does something good back for me. I hope you have that with your friend.
Yes, and if you don't, that's something to think about.
That would make him think about it.
Yep.
Paul, the other thing that really works with young men is to tell them stories about yourself. The 90-second rule gets dropped with this. Because if you tell him a story about yourself of something that you fucked up with, that you screwed up on, or that somehow things went awry, he will listen like crazy.
He's going to love stories about your fuck ups.
Yes, exactly. And
Yep.
and you can use your fuck ups, because we've all got plenty of them, to help give him a lesson about XYZ. Use some of your old stories about things that you did wrong. Boys love this. They absolutely love it. You did what? Really? I'm afraid I did, son.
Yeah. And of course, he's like, I would never do that. Well, anyway.
Oh, you hang in there, buddy. It's coming. It's coming right at you. But now he's got a story in his mind. He can see it better when it does come,
One of the things that I think is really critical with all kids, boys, girls, whatever, tell them the truth.
Really?
Be honest with them.
Really? No bullshit.
If you're living this crazy blue pill narrative and you say really, really dumb things like, oh, that's just the way things are with girls and blah, blah, blah. You're lying to yourself. You're lying to your child. You're setting your child up for all the mistakes you made and the misery because if you're blue pill, you're miserable.
Yes.
In my book, I don't think there's very many happy blue pill men.
Right.
They live their lives as doormats and servants, and you don't want to teach that to your son. So hopefully one of the things you can do is always tell the truth. And I would say eating red pills as a father is a great way to help your son.
Yes. Yes.
Because you will look at life and live life differently.
Amen. And helping him understand his own worth will help in that respect too. Because when he sees that he is worth something, he's not going to take disrespect. He's going to say, wait a minute, whoa. That's not, you don't talk to me like that. Because he's going to see his own worth.
And how many of us, Tom, at any point in our lives, how many people of our generation and even younger generations ever had an important male figure in their lives tell them that they have intrinsic value?
It's very rare.
It is almost non-existent.
Oh,
I mean, girls get told this all the time. All you have to do is be a girl and you're special.
That's it.
You're important. You don't have to do anything.
That's
Your
it.
mere existence is proof of your worth. This is how we raise girls. And we raise boys that if you don't do, you're not worth anything.
That's it.
You better perform.
That's it.
And so one of the great truths that we can tell boys is to tell them, you've got to remember, it's great. I saw you took an extra part-time job so you can finance your dating life. That's wonderful. I hope you're having fun with that, but I want you to remember that you're not just what you do, that you have worth just exactly like you are, without paying for a date, without doing anything for anybody. You're a worthwhile person, and you must remember that.
Yes. Bill Gates could not create another one. No one could. You have not just intrinsic value, but you're unique in that sense, completely and utterly unique.
Boys never. No. That's one of the things that I got from watching John Bradshaw over the years. He kept stressing in his lectures all the time that you are unique.
Yes.
That there has never, ever been another human being that has ever existed that's exactly like you, and there never will be
Exactly.
another being forever and ever.
Exactly.
You're the only you that has ever or ever will exist.
Yes.
And take in the richness of that. Even as a grown men, sometimes stop and think about your uniqueness.
Yes.
I mean, we've got a million things that are similarities between human beings and things that are sort of universal, but our uniqueness is real. And it's important to point this out.
Yes.
And I think important to point out to young men, you've only got one life as far as you know. maybe there's reincarnation, who knows? But as far as you know,
Yes.
you've only got this one shot at life. How do you
Yes.
want to spend it? That was sort of
Yeah.
like Tom's father saying, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Exactly. And that kind of question, Paul, implies that you have some dominion over the answer to that. So
And you do.
it's implying that you have worth in your capacity to be able to control your own life, which is really
And it
important.
also implies quite clearly that the onus is on you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Responsibility for your life and
This
to
here
make it
is
into what you
your
want.
problem.
Absolutely. This is not a my problem. This is a your problem. And my father was actually quite good at passing that information along.
Yes.
I remember telling him when I got old enough for my driver's license, I said, I really need a car. And he said, I think you do too. You need to go buy one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the message there was, go work, earn your money, and buy your car. I'm not going to do it for you.
Yeah.
Some people would have thought that was a cruel reaction. It wasn't. It was one that taught me responsibility for myself financially.
And worth.
And worth. And guess what? By the time I was 17, I got my car.
Yes, exactly. And you felt like you accomplished something.
Absolutely.
And if your father had bought you a car, you never would have gotten that experience.
No.
Yeah.
And that moment, that first car that I bought, I paid for.
Yeah.
It was an old beater, old Ford Falcon.
Ford Falcon. What year was it?
A 71.
3 on the column?
Yes.
Oh, God.
And old sluggish six-banger.
Yep.
But
it got you from point A to point B.
It was mine.
And it was yours, exactly.
And I paid for it, and that was a great moment.
Yes, indeed.
And you can help, as fathers, you can help your sons have lots of great moments.
Yes.
With the right guidance. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. Tell them the truth. And boys need to be educated about girls. They need to know what hypergamy is. They
Yes.
need to know what gynocentrism is. They need to know about the entitlement culture that girls are being raised in.
Yep.
And that,
And they need to know about relational aggression.
Do they ever?
Yeah, they need to know about that.
Another form of relational
Yes, and
aggression.
gossip and all those little passive things that get done that wipe you out, So there's all kinds of things that dads can pass on to their sons in short bursts, or through stories.
And it can be a challenge, guys. I remember I had a woman friend, her son at the time was 17 years old, and he was perplexed because he had given his girlfriend a birthday present and she gave it back to him and said that she wanted something nicer. And she didn't know how to talk to her son about this. And I talked to him, but it was too late. His whole reality was about, how do I, get something nicer? What would impress her? Right. And any talk of saying, wait a minute, this is kind of low rent behavior. To hand
It's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, to hand you back a present and say, I want something nicer. Like, who does that? What kind of, but it was amazing, Tom, because none of it registered. It just totally
right.
flew over his head. Everything I tried to say to get him to examine,
yep.
What are your standards for how you're going to be treated? He didn't have any. His only standard was, how do I please this woman?
Yep.
And guess what? He was raised by a single mother.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're going to be finding more and more out, Paul, as the years go on, about the lack of fathers in the home and what that does, especially to boys.
Pretty much when every city in this country burns to the ground.
Yeah. I'm afraid we're too late already, eh?
Which the direction that we're going,
Yeah.
we're going to really find out that the cost of a fatherless society.
Yep. That's exactly right. Sad but true.
But that doesn't mean that anybody out there within earshot of this discussion can't do different in their own home. They certainly can.
Correct. Yeah.
And with that, what do you think, Tom?
Are we about there?
I think we're about there.
I think we are. It's good discussion.
Anyways, we've been off for a couple of 3 weeks now. I think it's time to get back. So hopefully we'll be back full swing. Same bat time, same bat channel next week.
Yeah. Did we take a summer vacation?
I think we sort of did. Didn't really feel like a vacation.
No, it didn't. But we'll be back, guys. We'll be back next week.
We will be back. This was Red Pill Relationships number 46. We'll be back with number 47.
Chris Cooley. We'll see you then. Y'all take care.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.